Good, there we go. All righty, folks. Welcome to June 9th Java Operators meeting. I hope everyone is having a good week so far. Do we have any new faces? Let's see. That would like to introduce themselves. Okay, if not, then let's go down. Anyone have any community interest or any updates they'd like to give the team or the group?
We're making some additions to Scorecard with regards to like suite selection and exclusion and having test warning stuff. So all that stuff should be available to Java users as well shortly once it comes out. Or rather suite exclusion, but yeah, same difference. Like
could you link to the documentation for scorecards, please?
Yes.
I need to look into that at some point.
Yeah, for sure. I can also link you like a sample image that's written in Java that plugs into Scorecard, so you can kind of see how it plays with Java endpoints. Or you can write the tests in cluster side tests and Go as well, whatever works best.
Hi everyone. I had a question. I'm not sure if this is the appropriate time, but it's with regards to scaling or Java operator handling a large number of CRs. I actually work in the ecosystem engineering group at Red Hat, and one of our partners had this issue where they had 20,000 CRs that need to be reconciled. So normally when the operator is running, it seems to be working reasonably, but they have an issue when the operator is starting up. It has to go and process all of the CRs to figure out the state. So I was wondering, I think there was this talking point about that last week or then the last meeting where we said that during startup, it's not multi-threaded. But I was wondering if there's any sort of way to get around that. There was a reason given, actually joined the meeting late, so I didn't get the whole thing, but there was a reason given as to why when starting up the workers that were processing the queue were not multi-threaded for some reason.
Just one question. So the problem is that the first reconciliation after startup is just takes some time after it started, or just the reconciliations are okay. So not that the reconciliations are slow, because the default thread count or in the executor service is, I think, very low, or it's low in general. It's 5. I think that maybe the default should be increased.
Could we make
and
it
you can do that,
Christoph, where it's like a flag to run with higher thread count if you're going to be loading?
It's possible already. And you can configure your operator to use a higher number of threads.
Is it by setting that constant there?
It's with the configuration service. When you configure your operator, you get an instance of the configuration service. But I mean, the best way maybe is for these users to create an issue on the GitHub so that we can address that there. That there's a trace somewhere, and that could help other folks later on. Basically it becomes findable, but I mean, I guess we should document that better as well.
And one of their concerns was that they would, by increasing the number of threads, they would potentially overwhelm the Kubernetes API
that's
server.
The problem, yeah. It is a potential problem, yeah. But the issue there is that when you start your informers, basically they need to fill up their cache. So
exactly.
so if you have a high number of custom resource on your cluster, then obviously that will be an issue.
But just one comment on this, just an addition that we cannot do anything about the custom resources. If there are the other resources which you maybe have informers, that can be done in parallel, but the custom resources will be anyway the first, and that will be basically starting always as first and not in parallel. So it's nothing to do about that basically. Maybe some labels or something, but I guess no, because you don't want to use a filter that. So basically, if there are just too much custom resources, it's not too much to do about it.
Is there, what is the, I guess the issue with it taking so long?
I guess it's not 100% clear, but from what I could put together from what they've said is that there's an hour wait, or like more than an hour wait before their service becomes usable. So basically their operator provisions environments in their cluster.
Yeah.
And each CR corresponds to an environment. So when they update their operator or something like that, they have this 1 hour where they can't really keep everything in sync.
But that seems to be not related to the startup. I think I can imagine a few seconds to populate the caches, but even maybe less. But it could be tuned in by the threads maybe, or maybe we can
the
take
problem is that for the custom resources, right, then they all need to be reconciled. So
yes, I mean, we were talking about this. I was thinking about that we don't start the reconciliations until the custom resources are in the cache, the syncing period, until the first actual execution of reconciliation happens.
Right.
And that shouldn't be more than few seconds.
Yeah, I mean, I think from our point of view, the startup is still fairly quick. And it's that first reconciliation from the user's point of view, quote unquote, it's startup. They started the operator up and it still hasn't been able to do anything that they want it because it's busy reconciling. And so that's what I meant by startup. It's wanted to know what they were seeing or what was the problem they were experiencing. So it's basically an hour downtime for them.
Yeah.
The interesting question though would be, given the reconciliation logic that they have, I'm not sure that basically the same operator implemented in Go would perform any better.
It wouldn't. It wouldn't.
I'm not sure that's specific to Java.
No,
if your reconciliation logic is slow, then there's nothing the operator can do. It's
no, we have this problem on the Go side and on the Ansible side where if there's thousands of CRs, it can take a long time.
And so at one point we were thinking there is this, because we are not able to configure the number of the threads, but replace the execution service. And there are in Java these caching executor services that basically increase the thread count as many you want, basically, and just makes a big bubble. I mean, that's usually not advised to use, but setting a very high, like hundreds of thread count, I think even that wouldn't be a sin, just with the API server. So cool.
Yeah, I've asked them to kind of experiment to see if they actually hit issues with the API server, because like there's no sort of easy way to scale the control plane as far as
even with that, so even that could be, if there is in the reconciliation, you should just get everything from the caches, check the target state. So you just basically just call the API server at the end of the reconciliation, updating the status. But even that could be just kind of skipped if there is no real status update or no change in the status at the end. So that could be tuned out too. So at the end, if there is nothing changed, there will be no change. and no call to the API server at all.
Right.
Is this
Yeah,
open source operator, by the way?
I don't think it's open source. We're kind of trying to get more information from them, but I'll encourage them to open an issue on GitHub, so maybe they can share a bit more if they're comfortable.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Brett had an interesting question. Do we know why they had 20,000 CRs?
They didn't really give us an explanation. They just had it like
Okay.
they landed up with that many, and we're trying to figure out if there's a way to split them up or have some sort of hierarchy where there's a smaller number of CRs, but we don't really have visibility into their project.
Maybe it's time to revive Attila's idea on operator partitioning.
Yeah.
What is operator partitioning?
Well, it was an idea to scale, to be able to have multiple instances of the, well, I guess Attila can explain better, but the idea is to partition your custom resources based on some criteria, and then you can run several different instances of the operator that would deal with, I mean, basically each custom resource could be kind of hashed. And then based on the resulting hash, that custom resource would get assigned to an operator instance. So any operator and any custom resource would get processed by a given operator instance, and you can run several such operator instances in parallel, which normally you shouldn't be able to do, because then they would all get the same, I mean, they would all try to reconcile all the events, and so that they would go crazy, basically. So maybe that would be an option.
I sent the issue a link, but so I think, so in the first case, I think there is lots of things that can be done just optimizing the reconciliation, and basically not update even the status if it's not really necessary, and don't do other requests, and just get everything into caches and things like that. What we see that usually when somebody starts writing operator, it doesn't do it correctly as it's meant to be done. So
yeah, that's a good point. Actually, we don't really have visibility on what they're actually doing, so we're not sure if they're actually doing it. But
I know of customers that have, like, well, basically 20K is the number of nodes they have. So it's very possible that they have 20K custom resources. So yes, I mean, if your reconciliation takes a long time, then there's not much. The only thing you can do is try to optimize your reconciliation, and then maybe if that really becomes an issue, maybe we can revive that idea of partitioning operator processing.
Okay.
So by the way, so the idea is that if the reconciliation should not do any really change, and I guess this is usually the case when you are just restarting or upgrading the operator, then it should be extremely fast, because everything is from caches and just comparing the current state in the cache with the desired state and in memory, and so it should be really.
But the cache. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. No, but I mean, if they have resources that they need to check external to the cluster, then maybe that's also why it's being slow. Like if they query a third-party API or.
Yeah, I mean, we have also these event sources for that, which are caching those, but yes, so those on startups might be slow. Yes.
Yeah, I was going to say the cache is not persisted, right? So if it's a new instance, then it has to build up the cache in the beginning, right?
Yes. But so for the Kubernetes resources, that should be very fast. For if some specific API is slow, then it's slow. It's not much to do about it. But there are some ways to overcome this. We have these two kind of event sources to, for example, pull the external systems, and that can be tuned. So they only calls the system when it's really reconciling, or calls it upfront and queries it, so lists the resources and things like that. So we could take a look how to optimize that. But I think the best way is to create an issue, then dig deeper.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'll encourage them through that. Thanks.
Yeah,
thanks a lot
because
for-
all that discussion is really interesting. So if it happens in the context of an issue, then it's findable instead of here where
it's not
I don't
searchable.
know. It's not really searchable, and I don't know how long the recordings are persisted actually, but yeah.
For sure. Sounds good. I'll try to get them to do that, or at least I'll open an issue if they don't.
I mean, there are lots of different options. Another option is try to, but I mean, obviously that's not a quick solution, but something we are considering also is having a reactive core to the operator SDK, so that things would be, I mean, it's already non-blocking in some way, but increase the non-blocking aspects, I guess.
Yeah, I'm sure lots of things to try. But yeah, I didn't know about many of them, but thanks for all of the suggestions.
Yep.
I think another topic I wanted to bring up was we've been having some discussions about the CNCF and being part of it. So the question is how to go about it. We have several options. One would be to go on our own, but I don't think that it makes that much sense. The other would be to become part of the operator framework project, which, as far as I'm aware, is already part of and is already an incubator project of CNCF, right? So
Yes.
I guess moving under the operator framework organization would kind of make us de facto part of CNCF as well, right?
That's what we're trying to clarify. The operator framework chairs met yesterday. We just had an election in the past month or so we just started meeting again. And I brought this topic up to find out if there's can we just bring it in as normal and be done, or if there's any other issue that CNCF might gate us against.
Yeah.
I took the action item of going to contact them and find that out, just to make sure that there's nothing weird. To me, it seems like it should be, because if any one of us in the operator framework just created a new, because like Java operator plugins and RuckPack from the OLM side, we just created those projects, so that by doing that, they are part of the operator framework. So it seemed like that we should just be able to create this project there and put the stuff in it. But we wanted to confirm, because to make sure that it's okay to do that. I think it will be, but I want to make sure we don't do something stupid.
Yeah. I mean,
because clearly the license is compatible, so it's not a problem.
I mean, then again, it's something we are thinking about, but it's not a foregone conclusion yet.
Right.
On our side, we have to figure out what kind of ceremony that implies, and constraint that puts on the project as well.
Correct. And that's some of the questions I want to get answered. Some of those we can answer. I believe like the chairs of the operator framework are trying to not be draconian, so projects can make a lot of their own decisions for certain things. There is the governance that's in
Yeah.
operator framework, so that is something that the project would have to be bound by. It's not too horrible, but I don't know if there's anything in there that's different than what you've already been doing with the project. And I think the project by itself has been open source for a while, so it's not like owned by any particular person. Just there's a group of us that are maintainers, so. But I should know something by next week
Okay.
and
Great.
for more information about that. Yeah, I had suggested to that. To me, it made a lot of sense because we already have a lot of other operator-related things under the framework, and it seemed like a good fit to put the Java operator SDK in there as well. So, and that means you could get a seat at going to KubeCon as a maintainer and updates and things like that. So, yeah, going on your own, I anticipate. I mean, it took us a while to get in because there were, I guess, concerns about Helm and how Helm is used as a de facto installer versus OLM and operators and things like that. And so there was quite a bit of back and forth to get everything settled to get it in to the, I think it's the TOC that decides. But I'll have an answer hopefully by next week about if there's any blockers for us just pulling in the project.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, and it's also an open question for the community at large, right? Do they think it's a good idea for the project to become part of CNCF as well or not? I mean, I don't think, I would assume there wouldn't be any opposition to it, but that's the whole point of asking the community, right? I mean, you can have assumptions and be proven wrong, so. I know some of our users would see that as a benefit from a contribution perspective, because some of our enterprise users are restricted to basically they're not free to participate in open source project unless they are vetted, and basically the CNCF is part of the vetted organization, I guess, so that would make participation easier for some of our enterprise users as well. I'm not sure if there are any downsides, unless the ceremony becomes really crazy, which I don't think it is. But yeah, basically, I wouldn't really want something like of a process as heavy as the Eclipse Foundation or the Apache Foundation as well, where you have to have a vote and stuff like that to get anything done, basically. I don't know if anyone has any opinion on that, or if we can just
just some details. So, for example, one of our these users is basically allowed to need to basically explicitly ask for the company, so they contribute to open source project. And for example, by default, they're allowed to contribute to every Apache, I think Kubernetes 6 projects, and basically it will be super easy or much easier to be able to contribute to CNCF project if they ask permission for that. So it's basically, that would be a quite benefit for us.
and better visibility as well.
Yeah.
Prestige.
On the other hand, I think we lose some rights, no? Or CNCF got some rights by default. And we have to also sign, I guess, some kind of contributor license agreements or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, that's something we need to check on our side, but first we need to, I mean, like I said, it's not a foregone conclusion that we would do that move. Just thinking something we were thinking about. Yeah, we first need to check what the constraints are and basically what we need to do to become part of the foundation and things like that before we can make an actual decision on whether to do it or not.
Yeah. Okay.
Cool. Well, that's good. I did add a link to the governance that's currently in play for the operator framework. Again, it's mostly type of like code of conduct, and the projects get to decide what the rules are for becoming a reviewer on the project and that type of stuff. Some of the governance talks about just how to elect chairs to the actual operator framework and that type of stuff. So it's also going through an audit. So we, as the new chairs, are going through to make sure everything is either we are complying with it, or if we are doing things that are different than what we've stated, determine do we change it or do we change the process. So one of the two. So that's all happening. But I think it would be cool. It does add legitimacy to it. And like even at KubeCon, it is the operator framework itself is the project that's in CNCF. So like the stickers and things are operator framework. They're not operator SDK. It's not OLM. These are just sub projects of that broader framework. So cool. So I'll let you know as soon as I find information about the question, and then we can keep probing and talking about what issues, pros, cons, and any concerns. So that sounds cool. Yep. Anything else? All right. Let's go into triage a little bit. Anything in here that's cool to talk about? Uh-oh. Introduce ADRs.
Yeah. So we've been thinking about. I've been thinking about this for a very long time. It's so that we are making sometimes very complex decisions. There are like 5-4 factors why we are doing something with optimistic looking, with retries, with patch, and I don't know. So when sometimes lots of stuff going on, and I have very extremely good experience with ADRs. So when we create a folder, basically a directory of and just markdown documents where there is a pull request where we discuss the actual decision, we document the context. So it's about documenting technical decisions and not just in issues. So we discussed already this. It's if we see it's too much hassle, it doesn't bring any value, then we can just remove them. Not sure if anyone else has a good experience with that or any.
I'm not familiar specifically with ADRs, but it sounds very much like one of the things that we do in the operator framework is typically we put an enhancement document up, which describes what the thing is. So in this case, this is for run bundle, where we're adding the subcommand to actually run your bundle in OLM to the SDK, and we describe, here's the CLI, what the different flags are going to be, the design, how it's going to work, like what the scenario is, from a simple example to the more complex ones. And then this allowed us, there was a PR that went in that allowed discussion for it. And so it's a little more process oriented because there's a whole repo that is doing this. And this enhancement repo kind of aligns to what OpenShift is doing, as well as similar to the Kubernetes KEP process. I know that some projects like, let's see, Kubernetes, like KubeBuilder, they don't necessarily use an enhancement proposal. They typically will just create I don't have one. I don't know which one to pull up, but they typically, go ahead, say that again.
I was just saying, if you go to the code section, all the KubeBuilder designs are underneath of a designs folder.
Okay, so they've basically just done it inside created their design documents in the repo. And I've also seen projects where they just create an issue, a special type of issue, I guess, with a specific heading and stuff, and they just have the discussions there. So that's kind of the lightest weight, is start with issues, and this is how we're going to track it, or they create documents in the repo, or there's an actual repo that contains them all. So I don't know if that's what an ADR looks like or not, but
yeah, it's very similar. I think it's just the difference is just not focus on a feature, but really about the hard decisions, technical decisions, or regarding some architecture,
okay.
or yeah, anything. But it's very similar. It gives you a context. What is the open? What is the question? What is the problem we are solving? And what are the alternatives? And what was the decision, basically?
Yeah.
And that's it.
The one thing I found this to be useful for is when you make a change to like an architectural change to something that came through this process, because you can always go back and say, okay, we're making this change now, but why did we decide to do X first? And then when you go back and see the discussion, you're like, oh, we thought about Y, but we chose X because that was what most users needed right now at the time, and Y, we just kind of put it away. So it wasn't that we ruled out Y altogether, it was just, it wasn't something we needed to do. Or you look back at the decision and realize Y was never something that you talked about. Okay, that's fine. Then at least you know. I am one of those people that doesn't like to change code without knowing why the original thing was done. Because what I hate is fixing a problem today and then reinserting a problem that was fixed previously, and now I've got two problems that I'm dealing with. So I'd like to know what the history was and say, oh, that is no longer relevant, so therefore I can change that code, versus okay, just change it. So
yeah, I mean, exactly. So basically we have sometimes even problem to kind of thinking all inputs and all the decisions previously done, and then why it's some places we decided this way. And yeah, I think there are multiple ways to do this. It's just the issue seems to be, I don't know, it's this idea seems to be very relatively simple. It's there, there is a history in Git, and there is discussion in the pull request, and it's so basically it's very handy, and at the end to use them. And we will see if we see that it's not that good, or it's not doesn't fit on this project, then we can just stop doing it. And
yeah, no, I think it's a good idea, and it helps keep track of new folks coming in, being able to understand why certain things were done that way, and it saves us brain cycles because we don't have to try to remember. We could always just go back and say, oh yeah, that's why. So, yep, it's good. And it keeps you from having the same supposedly keeps you from having the same conversation over and over and trying to remember things. You can just go back to the ADR and say, oh, this is what was going on. Now this is the change we're making in addition to that. So yeah, I think that's a good idea. So that was cool. I thought it was something different than that. So cool. Looks like you guys have been triaging most of these anyway. Dependent workflows. How was your, you guys were doing that, like a project. Are you guys still doing that, or was that already released?
I'm doing it sometimes, or try to maintain it, but I don't see it. Why don't you see it? There should be.
We can't really hear you. Or at least I can't.
Okay.
Yeah, it sounds like it did what it usually does to me. Yep, there you are.
Okay, should be good. So yeah, I try to maintain this what I'm working on in this project. I don't really use the other one.
Yeah, I don't know what the other one was. I guess they're changing. I guess they're adding a new feature for it.
Yeah. So it was just basically roadmap, but we already started to use milestones for that. Rather, that what should be in the following milestones. But in this project, I just try to maintain what I should work on the next couple of days.
Oh yes, I see the milestones. Cool. Were there any issue that you needed to dig in more? If not, we just they look like they've been triaged and moved on. So
yeah, I think that's fine.
There's no new one here. There was a release that I did, or Lucky did the other day. We bumped the KubeBuilder dependency. It's largely because we're using KubeBuilder as a library. It doesn't really affect the scaffolding. But we are bumping, operator STK is bumping to Cube 1.24. So all of the plugins that are getting compiled in, we're trying to get them all on the right updated KubeBuilder and controller runtimes if they use that. And that PR is in progress so that hopefully the next SDK will come out with Kubernetes 124 updates. I looked to see, and I didn't see if Fabricate had 124 support yet, or anything else. So I did not change what we're scaffolding out of that, and largely 123 works. So because some of the Python stuff we're doing, we're leaving at 123 for the Ansible stuff because we're not making use of 124 yet. So, but so that's happening. Let's see. That's it, unless anybody else has anything they wanted to talk about. All right. If not, I will give you 15 minutes back.
Awesome. Generous of you.
I would have given you more if I didn't just ramble on, but.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Time.
Take care, folks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
See ya.
Have a good one.